Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I am delighted to be joined once again by Lawrence Connolly. Welcome back, Lawrence. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
It's always a pleasure, Lawrence. Always a pleasure to get your views on all things Celtic. We are opening up with the question, where are we going to watch the game on Thursday night? Obviously, there's far more to talk about as well, but I'm looking at Miss Sarajevo. Can you remember the song that you two did with Pavarotti?
Yeah, that was a conflict over there, wasn't it?
It was a tremendous track. Seriously, revisit it, anybody out there, revisit that, because that was at my height of being a fanatic of U2, and I remember the track well. I remember the Sarajevo connection from the gig that I went to in 1993, and I'm asking, are we going to miss Sarajevo, Lawrence? Are we playing words there? Are we going to miss the game on Thursday night? What's happening? We need to cover this game, and I want to know where we can watch it. And straight away, Kieran's saying that I'm sure there'll be a stream. Well, I'm hoping that there is. It would be better if we could just, actually watch it on a platform that we can ensure we're not going to lose the stream, because we like to cover every single game, Lawrence.
I think it's going to be moved. Celtic have said to expect an announcement later today. Has it not been moved kind of 40 miles away?
It has, yep.
So, but definitely missing Sarajevo. I can't remember the name of the place it's moved to. But, Celtic said to expect an announcement. Surely someone's going to cover it.
You would hope so. It's a playoff.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not Premier Sports, although I've signed up to them. So it could be another platform I've got to spend some cash on.
Well, there's been a wee bit of that over the last few weeks, hasn't there? I mean, we've had a couple of kind of one-off games whereby we're having to log into Ross County TV, St Mirren TV, Premier Sports, over and above your season ticket. Do you think the club's hands tied under these circumstances? Can they do anything to help us?
Who owns the TV rights? I think it's something the clubs going forward will be looking at. Because I've got Sky, I've got BT, like most people. You get Celtic TV, you get Premier Sports. You're now buying, as you said, for St Mirren and Ross County. Mm-hmm. What's the size of the Celtic audience out there compared to how much money they're getting off the current TV deal? Is it something that they really want to be looking at? Should we be running this ourselves?
Well, the chat on social media, Lawrence, is around the fact that we're all kind of starting to get to that acceptance stage of the fact that we won't be back at Celtic Park probably this season. Now that, were we being a wee bit kind of optimistic to think that we might have been in there before the end of the year previously? Perhaps. But we've all, invested in the season tickets. We've got them. And we've got the digital versions, the virtual season tickets. And I think a lot of the comments on social media is, what else are we getting here? Other than the stream, is there anything else? And, I don't know really if there's anything the club can do to get that match screens. It's obviously there's rights issues and there's regional issues in terms of broadcasting. But I would hope, and there's a few comments coming in that we're going to run through, I would hope that someone puts that on so we can actually get it, even if you need to pay that one-off fee. I mean, no one likes doing that over and above the virtual season ticket, Lawrence, but it's it needs to be done under the circumstances.
Yeah, as always, we remember, no visitors to the house if you pay the one-off fee under the latest regulations. So we'll be watching it just with family.
Yes, absolutely. Now, the other day there, you were in for the game. You came along with Kevin Graham, another long-time contributor to A Celtic State of Mind, and you were wearing a very similar T-shirt to the one you're sporting today. It was white on green. We now have green on white. Yep. And I had a couple of people asking what the relevance of Betis was on A Celtic State of Mind. So over to you. Give us a wee history lesson.
So I think it goes back to Brother Walfred. So the boy that started Betis, Manuel Ramos Asensio, come over when he was 8 years old, come over from Spain to learn English, and he went to St Joseph's in Dumfries. Obviously, the brother Walford connection there. He fell in love with football and fell in love with the Celtic way in his time spent in Scotland. So when he returned to Spain, when he was older, he set up a football team. He decided Celtic's colours were for him. Decided not to make it hoops though, and to switch the jersey to vertical stripes, which goes back to Celtic's obviously original kit. So a big Celtic connection. Even tying in brother Walford. So spreading the Celtic diaspora round about the world. Celtic as in the club, as opposed to Celtic the people.
No, it's great, because I do love these connections, and we know that we've got various connections to clubs all over the world, Lawrence, so it's great to see sporting that. I also love the old vintage Kappa logo, because we spoke last week or the week before to a young man who's got a shop in Edinburgh, and he's selling a lot of the kind of up-and-coming brands, as well as some of the old classics from the 80s. And I do remember when Kappa was a classic maker of Italian football jerseys, always long sleeve. You can remember the great Juve jerseys with Kappa on it. It was a really sought after brand back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, 90s cool, wasn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, if you're 90s, you want the Kappa stuff, Kappa trainers, Kappa trackie.
The trackies killed it for me. It killed the brand, didn't it? And then it went on to the old Little Britain thing and bright pink Kappa tracksuits. But I think they're maybe making a bit of a comeback. I think they're now viewed as being quite, in vogue again.
I think stuff comes in cycles, and maybe it's as that were in our youth in the 90s, or now get a bit more disposable income and harken back to it, and perhaps people seeing pictures of their parents or older people they look up to.
That's scary to think that. That's scary to think, isn't it? I do remember, there was this wave. There was a new wave of hooliganism around Scottish football. I say hooliganism. Wee firms were popping up all over the place, and there was a theory that they were the offspring of the originals from the 80s, so they were coming through, and they were maybe hitting 20, 21, and they were a new breed. But some of them had just watched a couple of films, and thought, I want a bit of that there.
Yeah.
The terrace culture.
Movies leading to violence.
Green Street.
Yeah. But maybe it is listening to the stories of their elders, and thinking, what about that? Who knows? I mean, Aberdeen were really big in the casual front.
Still active.
The first one to bring
Still
in
active.
The style to it, wasn't it? Beer stalkers, Farris, Pringles.
The thing is, though, Lawrence, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not just tarring everybody with the same brush. I actually think the terrace culture was obviously far more than just the violence and the hooliganism that you see that the movies focus on. I mean, the fashion, the culture, the way of life of these people was absolutely brilliant, and it's so influential. And you've seen a lot of the time there was that crossover between music and football, wasn't there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a whole kind of counter-culture, wasn't it? Youth being able to express themselves through that, especially working-class youth that were able to. I suppose you're coming out late 70s, early 80s, not the best of times. The country's starting to recover from the recessions then. People expressing it. People are tribal. They're getting to identify that's their tribe. And I think, there was a whole different fashion. I remember Celtic, remember the half and half hats that came out at the time. So as opposed to with the round bob on them, with the kind of rectangular shape to them, the casual hats, half Liverpool, half Celtic and stuff.
It was certainly,
that was just after the builders hats you had to wear.
Not to be confused with half and half scarves, mate, because that's a completely different thing altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Only ever bought them at European games, the big ones, or the friendlies like Tommy Burnswood, used to put on when we had maybe not done so well in Europe. They wanted to bring a bit of class to the club, when it was Barcelona watching Prosinecki play, or playing against Bayern, Grant's testimonial. Yeah.
You mentioned Prosinecki there, proper cult footballer, Dragan Stojkovic. Were they no part of the Red Star Belgrade team that came over for the centenary game? I think it was on Boxing Day, was it not? 1988?
Yeah, I think so. But I just remember him standing around that Barcelona team. Just one movie. I was sitting up 4-4-5, so quite far back, low double D seat 19. But so you're looking down and Brozenecki just moves his foot over the top of the ball. You see the whole Celtic midfield shift that way. You're like, oh, he's salty as all just with moving his foot. But,
he was a genius, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was a genius. One last wee word on some of the brands. I mean, I think back to the days of Kappa. There were some brilliant football jersey brands. Neri was another Italian one, the NR. You've seen that in a lot of great kits. And then, of course, you would see a lot of the brands on the terracing. Lacoste, famously brought over from the Liverpool fans who were, scouring Europe for new gear, clothing as well. And then obviously you had, moving into the kind of more recent era, you've got the rise of Stone Island and all that kind of stuff as well, and Napa Piri. But it's interesting how the football terrace culture can, infiltrate fashion. I think that's tremendous. And there's some of these brands as well that they can make a comeback. I mean, Benetton, remember Benetton as well?
United Colours.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Benetton, and then, of course, you got some of the more cheesy ones I mentioned in a podcast the other week there. Can anybody remember SBX and Troop and all that kind of stuff? Remember them? Travel Fox. Travel Fox trainers, sought after trainers.
I mean, there are some businessmen that specialise in resurrecting brands. Doesn't always work for them sometimes,
I know, you're right.
Thankfully.
That's what happened with Geo Joy, isn't it? The Manchester brand. But was it not the same guys that had Joe Blogs and all that?
Yeah, I suppose, you look what Ashley does. That's what he does, buys the stress brands. And
Chippy.
It's off their old name.
Naff. Great. Champion was one of those brands, wasn't it? Champion.
Aye.
That's come back. I've seen that kicking about. But anyway, more about the football. Let's move on to the soccer. And people are coming through to say Declan McConville. Hello, Declan. Long time no speak. There was talk that Eurosport was going to cover the game. I did see something on Twitter about that Eurosport might be covering the game. That would be good. If they were. We need to get a stream somehow, because there's no way I'm going to be listening to it on the Scottish mainstream media and then trying to speak about it at half time. On Celtic TV making an announcement today, seemingly. Well, that would be good.
JP tweeted it, expecting an announcement from the club, so fingers crossed that they've come up with some option. Because if no one's picking up, how complicated would it be for the club to say to a TV company over there, a media company over there? Because Celtic must know that, either put it on the season book or they could get some sales from it.
I mean, you would want it in any case, but under the circumstances, the footage is even more sought after.
Yeah.
Because nobody can go.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, we all want to see Celtic play. That's the bottom line, whether it's a qualifier or any game, but, whether it's end of season game, you want to see the game, don't you? And hopefully the club's going to make it happen.
Are away teams in Europe producing programmes? Just because we're steeped in nostalgia in today's show, I'm just wondering. I know someone in particular who collects European programmes, and he's got every single programme home and away except for one in the history of Celtic, and it was the game against, was it Dynamo Batumi? I think that's a very rare programme away. Are they still producing programmes?
I think they will be.
The away teams,
fans are allowed in there, but I don't know how many fans will be there with the game being moved 40 miles. Their fans are allowed in. There's no fan there, is there? I
don't know. I actually don't know.
So I think them moving at 40 miles might kill the crowd. Surely over there, even then, they would travel 40 miles to see Celtic.
We'd travel even further than that, Owen McGrandles. John David streams on YouTube if you're desperate. Their comms are awful, but better than the radio. So what does that say for the radio? I mean, we're going to have to watch the game. We're covering the game anyway. We'll be covering it by hook or by crook. We'll be covering that game, Lawrence. And we don't do the kind of talk through or the watch along or whatever you want to refer to it as, because I think people prefer to actually watch the game, but we certainly do the pre-match, post-match and half-time analysis, and we're looking to do that. So whilst we're on the subject of Sarajevo, and having spoken about that fantastic Pavarotti U2 collaboration from the 1990s, would it have been? Brilliant track. Check it out. We are now going to be speaking about the game. Let's have a wee chat about the game on Thursday night. Couple of injury concerns after a Yeti injured himself. What's the story with Ryan Christie?
Well, I think he'll be out. On the lead up to Yeti's goal, so that was two players injured. Clearly filled in the box, but obviously ref didn't see anything because it wasn't going to give a penalty. There was no advantage played, so I think he's going to miss the game. But luckily for us, we're well covered in that position. You know, we can just slot Cham in. It's not something we're going to struggle to cover. Ayeti, well, you know, hopefully Eddie's back in form then, just slots into his position. We've got Klimala and Griff on the bench, should we need them.
Well, that's the question. Do we go with 2 strikers on the bench? Because obviously we've got less options in the European games, Lawrence, and it was brilliant to see Griffiths back for the first time in a competitive match this season, back in amongst that first 20-man squad with the 9 subs sitting on the bench. We'd been pushing for it for weeks on the podcast, him and Rogic, because, you know, we continually said we're always pushing for youth. We're always pushing to give youth a chance in this podcast, Lawrence. But when you've got Rogic and Griffiths, who weren't part of that first team squad, or they weren't sitting on the bench, you know, we were trying to, you know, push for the pair of them to get back involved. So it's great that they are back on the bench. Do you think any of the 2 of them will make the bench on Thursday, though?
I think Griff will. I think we have the 2 strikers just in case that, you know, we know Eddie's not been 100% for the last 2 games. So I think we'll put the 2 on, just in case we need to chase a goal.
You know, the thing as well with Griffiths is obviously it's all about match sharpness, etc. But we talk about game changers. I think that's why we were pushing for Rogic and Griffiths. I can't see the 2 of them being on the bench, to be honest, because there's such a lack of game time in their legs. But then you might be in a situation where you're going to be playing, you're going to have someone like Soro on the bench. Doesn't look like the type of player you would bring on to change the game.
No, he's more someone you think you'd be closing it
Shore
out.
it up, yeah.
Well, maybe if we've got, hopefully, you know, get a few goals up, and you could see him coming on to close it down. Same way, El Hamid's, he's covered right across the back line in case of injuries. You'd want Turnbull on the bench, especially after his 45 minutes. A
few people are calling for him to start as well, Lawrence, because he did look good, didn't he?
Well, it's either him or Cham that's going to slip in instead of Christie, isn't it? Cham does really well in Europe, I feel, you know, so it's a tough decision. I suppose Lenny's paid to make that decision, who would want to go with, Turnbull or Cham. Away in Europe, I've not watched any videos of Sarajevo or seen any footage, but I'm sure Lenny's been studying it and Strachan's been studying it, and they may see something that one's more suited than the other to start.
Aye, so match specific rather than the fact Turnbull came on and made an impact. But I don't think Encham's had a particularly bad game over the last few weeks.
Don't think so. He, you know, in Europe, as I said, you know, against Lazio, he's really good last season. Yeah, they'll be picking a team, I suppose, based on they've got to take into whatever they see of the opposition, whatever video highlights package they've got, whatever reports they've got on them. They may just think one player's more suited than the other. All
right, well, I won't put you on the spot, but have a think about your predicted 11, and at some stage we'll run through that as well, Lawrence, as well as your predictions for the game as well. And we've got a message coming through from Stuart McClan, who is commenting on YouTube. For everybody who's watching on YouTube, we are trying to build our subscriber base, so please click on the subscribe button and the notification button, as we are going out on an almost daily basis, Lawrence. I might take a day off, normally when Celtic aren't playing at the weekend, a Saturday or a Sunday, but we make up for that on match day, where we put out at least 3, sometimes 4 broadcasts as well. So loads of free content coming your way from a Celtic State of Mind. Please subscribe. We're trying to build up the figures. Now, Stuart says that this is one of the reasons I'm angry at Celtic. £625 for my season ticket, then £40 a month for Sky Sports, 10 to 20 quid per game on Premier Sports, BT Sports subscription. This is the thing. I mean, we're looking at Ross County. I forget how much it was, but we're subscribed to that for the PPV game. St Mirren, £12.50, I reckon. Ross County, 15 quid, if I remember right. Yep. So it is getting to a stage where we're spending a hell of a lot of money. And I know, obviously, we're not travelling, because in my case, there's the travel to Celtic Park and, you know, your match day costs, etc. I know we don't have that, but we are only watching it on the telly or on a laptop, sometimes on a phone. Where is the added value?
I think, you know, SPL or SPFL, whatever it was, TV was spoke about a while back. Rangers and Celtic were the ones that taking the blame for killing it. when McCann came in, he talked about added value, what more you got with your season book. There was talk about channels. You remember you used to get the free travel. You'd get into the reserve games for free, but match days you'd get free travels, whether it was first team or reserves. And he was talking about there should be more events at Celtic Park where season book holders get invited along too, because that's a venue, obviously just now under COVID we can't, but that's often empty, that they could be given more perceived value at season book holders about inviting them along for, you know, whatever kind of event, but still making money. I think it's something that, although the club does really well commercially, they could improve upon. This season with COVID, how many teams are going to be left standing at the end of this?
We've asked the question, Lawrence. We've asked the question.
Henry McLeish, the former First Minister, he's said, you know, the government can't really help the SFA or SPFL. They're too secretive in how the ways work, and I'm pretty sure it's Celtic
SFA secretive. Interesting. Interesting use of words there, eh?
Yeah, well, I think Celtic have always had a problem with the secretive members of...
Secretive nature.
Well, some members are more secretive than others, shall we say. No, secret agreements that have been challenged in open court, saying that they don't have jurisdiction over a member club. And that was found to be correct, but surely they've got... You know, it's got to be in the public interest and other members' interest to know why one club's... You know, they're subject to a different standard of governance than the rest of the league.
Is this the same club that appeared on The Chase the other night?
I can't believe that Bradley Walsh, big Celtic fan, doesn't...
Come on, Bradley.
The wrong phrasing of the question.
I know.
But yeah, it would be the same club. But yeah, Bradley, big Celtic fan, isn't he? So I'm sure he'll be having a word with his researchers on that.
He should have corrected himself, our Brad.
Yeah.
He played a bit, did he not?
He
was at Brentford or something?
Has he not been up at Celtic Park for charity games?
I think you're maybe right. I do remember seeing him in the hoops. I mean, all the cool cats are Celtic fans, aren't they? So let's have a look. You're right, though, about this added value. I mean, I've always thought about it in terms of the marketing strategies and all that as well, Lawrence. You know, when you think about some of I'm interested in kits. We opened the discussion up talking about the vintage Kappa kits in the 1980s. I've always had an interest in kits, so much so that I took 5 years of my life to write a book on them. And, you know, some of them you look at, you think, where was the fan consultation in respect of some of these jerseys that even recently have been released? And I know that you have focus groups, for example, but, you know, I got my first season ticket 1994. I've never been invited to a focus group, you know, so who's getting invited to them and why? How can't a Celtic season ticket holder log into some portal and give their views on new kits or templates and things like that? So as well as added value, there's also engagement that I think could improve. Definitely.
I mean, hands up, I have been invited to a focus group at Celtic, but not in kits. Perhaps surprise you to know on pie.
How did they select you for the pie eating focus group?
I'm not.
And what did it entail? Come on, share it. Share this with us.
It was an evening of eating pies, as you may have guessed.
Are you making this up?
No, I'm one of Celtic's official pie eaters, as is a fellow Kenny Harkin, who I met there, who I grew up with in Cambuslang. So yeah, they were selecting a new supplier of pies, and they had a focus group at Celtic Park.
I'm not sure if I'm buying this, Lawrence.
Well, I've got a letter for selling somewhere. 2003 season. You had to go along and taste. I think it was 4 mince pies and 4 steak pies.
What about macaroni? Was there a macaroni option?
I don't think there's ever been a
for
macaroni
us
option
vegetarians
at Celtic Park.
Nah.
No, I don't think so. I think it was just it was just mince or steak pies.
No bean and potato pie.
Nothing fancy like that, mate. Nothing at all fancy like that.
Right. So you were selected. Was it randomly?
I can't remember how it came through, but I was over the moon to get selected, and I had to do quite a bit of training for it. So, does anyone know, like, Iceland or Farm Foods were doing 6 pies for £1, so I bought like loads of stocks, and for the 2 weeks in the run-up, I was making sure that I could put away 6 pies in one sit. Didn't want to let Celtic down.
Lawrence, we are wide-ranging on the Celtic State of Mind, but that's taking a biscuit, and I'm delighted to hear that story. Was there a prize or anything, or were you just to say, Pie 4, Pie what? I mean, what was the story with this?
There was a group of it's a proper focus group. That's serious business. 60,000 people is going to be eating these pies for a season.
How many pies did you eat on the day?
I managed all 6, mate. I didn't realize that I actually had extras. It's please some me after
6
more.
pies.
So you just had to mark the pies. Out of 10, what would you give them on pastry, on filling, and overall? And that was it, as I remember. That
presentation, did that come into it? Was that one of the criteria?
It may have been. Definitely pastry filling, may have been presentation, smell, and overall score. I think
if anybody else has ever been invited to Celtic Park to try out some pies, then give us a shout, because I'm not convinced.
I've got a jersey in the house, 2003 jersey with Pie or 03 on the back. I'll have the letter from Celtic somewhere.
Dig it out.
I'm official Pie eater.
Dig it out and bring it in.
Right.
Dig it out and bring it in. David Logan via YouTube. How there isn't a Celtic TV app that streams straight to your television is mental. I mean, we've entered into a period, Lawrence, probably the reason why we're sitting here just now doing this, which we're going to keep doing, lockdown or not. We've entered a period where everybody's adapting onto how they get their message out there, how they get their content out there. And I think massive clubs like Celtic obviously have all the tech. They have all the tech. They've got the budget. They've got the staff. They've got the know-how. But sometimes just engage with the fans, because some of the best ideas you hear are just from discussions like this and people making suggestions via the social media and opening it up. I mean, imagine having a discussion like this with a Celtic player or a member of Celtic staff. It's monitored. I mean, if something ridiculous comes in from any of the social medias, you don't have to add it. You can actually block the user immediately. And we've been doing that. We're getting a lot less of them. None of them Celtic fans, I don't think, as far as I could understand from the kind of points they're trying to make. But it's all about engagement, so let's be engaged. Let's be engaged with the club. The
way media is consumed is definitely different. I've got a 12-year-old, and she doesn't watch TV, she watches YouTube. It's all...
Yep.
Most of it's user-generated content. Some of these people are becoming stars through it, but if that's the way the kind of younger generation are heading, and it's well documented as a change in the way people are consuming media, it wouldn't be that hard for Celtic to do with it, to jump ahead and go, well, this is where the future lies, let's jump on and get an app out there, get a YouTube channel, and make sure we've got content coming in. We've got, I suppose when you talk about brands, you want raving fans, don't you? Every brand wants it. Apple's very good at getting it. Well, Celtic's got that. And it's how they're going to make best use of that relationship, which I think everybody would say is perhaps not happening just now, whether it's consultations and strips. They're definitely doing well on the pie eating. But saying that was 17 years ago.
That's a while ago.
So I don't know if they've disbanded or I just wasn't asked back.
The pie eating focus group. The things you learn on this show. Brian McLean, 19, you're commenting via Twitter, many asking for the extra value to be applied here. I think I've seen a lot of comments like that on social media. Lawrence, looking for a wee bit of extra value. We all realise the situation we're in, and that's why people are investing in the club in a different way, as we have done before. I think the Adidas range was brilliant anyway. The design of that was superb, and people have invested hugely in merchandise and in their season books, and we're just asking, we're dying to watch this game on Thursday night. So to answer the next question from Begbie, who is commenting on YouTube, just joined, is it not on TV? Well, at the moment, I believe that there hasn't been an announcement. It might happen while we are doing this broadcast, and if it does, please let us know. We don't think at the moment the game's been shown anywhere. So we're looking to try and find out where we can watch the game, because we're going to be covering the game. We're going to be doing the live pre-match, post-match and half-time analysis. So we need to try and determine where we can find it. Now, via Facebook, the reason your avatar and your name's not showing up at the moment is there's a very short registration process you need to go through on StreamYard. So I don't know who I'm referring to, so apologies for that. Do you guys think the result on Thursday will determine whether we do any more business before Monday's deadline? Keep up the good work. What do you think, Lawrence? I mean, where are we in terms of targets? It's all about left backs at the moment, isn't it? Left backs,
left-sided centre half. That seems to be the rumour. There's a few. There's a boy at Charlton. There's Nicholas Lewson at Bristol.
Victor
Nelson, Copenhagen captain, left-sided centre half. So there's a few rumours. Does it depend on Thursday. I think the boy for Charlton, the money's low enough that it shouldn't. It may depend if someone else goes out. Again, there's rumours about Cham and Christie going down south. But if it's going to be the 8.5 million for the Copenhagen captain, I don't think we'd spend that without him qualified for Europe. It's buying a boy off Charlton for around about $1 million. Hopefully we would buy that. I think that's a position everybody knows we need cover for, left wing back or left back, whatever you want to call it. That's where we're looking to get some cover in, isn't it? You've got Nicholas Eliasson, Bristol City, decent left wing back, Doughty at Charlton, but they are, I think, $1.5 million downwards for them. So hopefully either of those wouldn't depend on Europe. The centre half from Copenhagen, if it's $8.5 million, I think that would definitely depend on Europe.
Oh, definitely. I think, in answer to the question, the type of transfers, I think, will depend. I don't think we can possibly go until December 31st without bringing in another left back. I don't think we can do that. We can't risk it. But in terms of the type of transfers, i.e. permanent or loan deals, I think that may be affected if the unthinkable happens on Thursday night. We still need the cover and we might start looking at the loan market. I'm pretty sure we're looking at the loan market in any case, because there's plenty of players, for example, from the English market that you can tap into and strengthen the squad. We've done it effectively in the past, normally in January, Lawrence, but we have done it effectively, and people can maybe speak about players that were brought in like Toljan and Ollie Burke and Timo Weah, Charlie Musonda, and it's not worked out. But a lot of the time it's about bolstering the numbers, and sometimes by bolstering the numbers you get better performances out of the guys who currently have the jersey.
Well, I would say Weah and Burke actually, they definitely gave us a spot, but both of them contributed with goals. I know Weah maybe blotted his copybook by going, I want to go and play for the USA. Because Lenny wanted him to stay see the season out, didn't he? He was getting game time. Burke missed a few sitters, but he scored a few. They definitely gave us a lift when they came in. I know Musonda didn't work at all, did he? Apart from one cross in Europe.
There was that one moment. There was one moment that St. Pittsburgh, St. Petersburg. I was going to say St. Pittsburgh there. St. Petersburg. Zenit. There was one moment, but other than that, it was a failed experiment and a very expensive one as well. Yeah.
Well, qualifying, I suppose it got us a lot of money. But yeah, not every transfer works, whether it's loan or permanent. I suppose loan, there's less risk. I think we'll definitely be looking at the loan market. You've touched on it, we need cover for Greg Taylor. I mean, if Taylor was getting the kind of abuse that Frimpong's taken, he's going to get injured sooner or later, isn't he?
Yeah. And he has taken a bit. That type of the physical I'm trying to choose my words wisely here, because I think Frimpong's basically booted all over the park, Lawrence. It's about the only way, that and doubling up on him is about the only way that the clubs know how to deal with Frimpong. But I've seen that kind of abuse and that kind of treatment being dished out to Taylor as well.
Yeah, I think clubs are definitely targeting Frimpong, or players are definitely targeting him, whether it's an instruction to target him or whether they're fed up with him skinning him, and they're like, I think Danny McGrain talks about it. The hardest player ever played against was Jesper Olsen, who went to Man United. First game against him, he skint Danny a few times. Danny said, look, with no intelligence on him at that time, there wasn't anything to watch out for this player. But Danny said it was Tommy Gemmell's advice to him. It says, look, they can't run by you with a sore ankle. So Danny said, second game, made sure early doors it was tackle on him, and that was him quiet for the rest of the game. So maybe players are still doing that, But Danny says that's how Olsen got his move to Man United. They reckon there must be a player there if he can get the better of Danny.
Interesting enough, I always thought, when I was looking at that crop of players, the Quality Street kids, I always thought to myself, clubs must have been interested in Danny McGrain, and obviously Kennedy Dalglish goes to Liverpool, Hay goes to Chelsea, McCarry goes to Man United. Man United tried to sign George Conley, and we're given absolutely no indication that they would take any type of money for him at the time, because he was Scotland's Player of the Year at the time. And Danny much later found out that Man United were also interested in him as well, but he didn't find out at the time. but just shows you the sign of the times, Lawrence, whereby the club was in control back then, wasn't it?
Oh, I definitely. Yeah. Even right up until, I suppose, the 80s. Well, up to Bosman, wasn't it? The club kind of owned you. It was. It definitely, as Bosman improved it, probably, but Danny McGrain, world's best fullback, 74, world's best defender, and World Cup, and that's when he was suffering from undiagnosed, suffering from diabetes. I think it lost a stone and a half over that period of the World Cup. Mm-hmm. But for a number of years, he was the world's best defender. Yeah. So must have known there was an interest from him somewhere, even if he didn't know concretely which clubs. I think there was a murky world then, involving brown envelopes and if they got a transfer or not.
Heard a lot of stories of that ilk, Lawrence. I certainly have. World class fullback Danny McGrain. I don't think we'll get too many arguments around that as well. But I do sometimes think, and I know Danny's written 2 books over the period, neither of which he rates in any way, shape or form. He completely criticises them if you ever ask him about the books that he's been involved in. But I think a Danny McGrain book would be good, because even if you think he came back as a coach in 97, yep, and the managers he's worked under, everyone since Wim Jansen.
Well, before lockdown, I suppose, I'm trying to think when it was now, it was March, wasn't it? So probably January, February. Talking to Danny, he was still going, although he's not coaching day to day, he still goes up. And he was saying he was having a chat with Frimpong, etc. You can see his influence there, what a player to be advising you.
I know.
It's, even if Brendan enhanced the story, shall we say. Yeah. Is enhanced another word for makeup? Is that?
Embellish.
Is it?
He's
is
embellished.
That made up?
Aye. He's embellished it. He definitely has, and, Danny told us that in front of a live audience, Lawrence. It was interesting at the time, because Brendan Rodgers was still the manager. But Jimbo, hail from Antalya, and hail to you as well. It's brilliant that we're able to reach all over the globe when we do the broadcasts. We get some tremendous figures coming back from the analytics, and it's always great to see us going to various parts of the world. Lawrence, you were saying a pal of yours was listening in Dubai the other day, and he heard your dulcet tones, so he was a bit surprised you were involved.
Yeah, Brian Donaghy's moved out to Dubai with his missus. They're doing well out there, and he had a workman in the house, so he was showing him what to do, and he had us on in the background, and sends a wee Facebook message to say, couldn't believe your voice coming over the TV. Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. Kenny McAdam via YouTube: Celtic fans didn't tolerate the casuals of the 1980s. Hooligans not welcome. What was your memories? I mean, I went to my first game 1987. So in terms of hooligans, I was never obviously involved in the 80s. What's your memories, Lon?
So I remember rowdies, casuals. I don't think they were as welcome as they were at other clubs, Celtic soccer crew, but I would say they definitely existed. But I don't think they were as big a thing at Celtic, and they were definitely frowned upon. But they existed. I would say, they did exist, but they were more frowned upon than other clubs.
Yeah, what I found very, very interesting, again, it's a point of reference, is that I've spoken to Celtic fans, going back to something you mentioned earlier with the hard hats that were then decorated. They were decorated so that the bottles didn't smash your skull. But I've been told by some of the old school that certain gangs actually existed, not hooligans as such, but gangs who existed outside of the football in the jungle at certain areas of the jungle. So you had the Shamrock, and based on where you were from outside of Celtic, you might have supported the same team, but if you were in a rival gang, so there was wee pockets going on in the jungle. Again, that was before my time.
Well, Glasgow had a huge gang problem, and it was all area based. So it was, obviously my background, Paul, so I know a wee bit about that arena, and Glasgow's was different. Most gangs elsewhere in the world, it was to do with making money and etc. But Glasgow's was just very tribal. You're from our area, so yeah, there was the Shamrock, the Bison. Yeah, there's a few different gangs, different areas that would, and it would naturally just boys growing up together from whatever, the same area, same housing estate, go to football together. I think it was just as simple as that. It was just boys growing up, but there was a big gang culture in Glasgow, wasn't it?
So,
Violence Reduction Unit, Scotland, Tony Bones, well, he's retired now, but he's done a lot of work there to kind of try and break that down and the problems that go with it.
Definitely. Now, Paul Sav, commenting on YouTube, welcome back to the show, Paul. The Gary Oldman movie The Firm was brilliant. He was a scary guy. What movies of that ilk spring to your mind? I quite liked ID, remember?
ID, Green Street.
What was the name of the team again? That's on the top of my... It'll come to me. In ID. I thought that was good back in the day.
Yes.
Shadwick? Was it Shadwick? Something like that? Someday, please.
Something from a film, but I'm not too sure about it.
Check that out for me if you're online. I think it was it Shadwick? Something like that. I reckon it was, but I thought that was a good one. It's maybe no aged that well. I've not seen it for a few years.
Yes. I suppose it's documenting a culture that was definitely there, wasn't it?
Has there ever been a Scottish one? Has there ever been a Scottish one made? Because, I mean, the Scottish hooligan scene with Hibs and Aberdeen specifically, but also other issues that were existing in football stadiums around about that time. That'd be an interesting plot as well, would it not?
Trent Spilling touching it a wee bit with the Hibs did that. But yeah, it's something that's definitely there to be done, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. No, for me, because I'm having a sabbatical when it comes to writing. I'm semi-retired. Gary Doonan, if you look at the Scottish Cup final riot in 1980, there was a whole different type on the pitch that day. Mods, skinheads, the Keith Chegwin cords look. What did you call them? People that wore the Keith Chegwin cords. Punk, and even an old Rangers fan on the pitch with a silver shiny suit swinging punches.
Aye, that was just... That wasn't the organised violence. I suppose it was more organised in the 80s that it came into, wasn't it? The 80s, fight. When the police get hold of things in grounds, fights arranged away from the ground, and outside the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But the 80s was... it just seems to be a team that riots if they lose things in finals. They have a habit of that. I don't know why. And it's not going away with the new incarnation.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, see, when we're talking about football culture, there is a differentiation which I think is missed on the authorities, Lawrence, between hooligans and ultras. There is definitely a distinction between the two.
Well, if you look at, I suppose the Green Brigade's a big Celtic ultra scene just now. They do a lot of great work with food banks, raising funds, but they get kettled, they get blamed for stuff that they weren't even at in George Square, the place, whether you're blue or green, that there was an attack by Rangers fans, and somehow the Green Brigade or Celtic fans were getting dragged into it, and Celtic fans weren't even there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding of things that have changed, or just viewing, I suppose, working class. It's easy to target people without as much of a voice. I don't know if there's any bigotry in the targeting of the way, the Green Brigades. There's
definite bias. There's bias.
There's a definite bias when you've got things like the Orange Walk can go down and that kind of thing's tolerated, or you've got a Justice Minister after cup finals saying, that was great, this is an advert for Scottish football, but all you had was anti-Irish, anti-Catholic songs for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But a Justice Manager thinks, I can stand up and say this is the brilliant advert.
This is a spectacle.
Is it so normal that you're blinded by it? Are you completely blinded by that? Yeah, I think there's an inherent bias in a culture in a country that doesn't seem to be willing to be acknowledged. I mean, when they brought in the Offensive Behaviour Act, it was more or less, one of the ministers then says it's more or less an evening up act. The problem is there's too many Rangers fans being arrested, and not enough Celtic. But the thing is, it's not fans of particular clubs you arrest, it's lawbreakers you arrest.
Yes.
If one clubs are breaking the law more than others, well, they should be arrested more. You don't need to bring up an even up act to go, well, we want to target them now because we're not arresting them. Why are you, if they're breaking the law, arrest them. That was your problem. They weren't breaking laws, so you couldn't arrest them. So you specifically brought in a law to allow you to target Celtic fans, which, it's a scandal. What would John and Barnes say about the unconscious bias in that? Or is that conscious bias?
I think it is conscious bias. What John would say, maybe I'll ask him again, part 2.
Is it unconscious, conscious bias? I don't know. Have they actually stepped back and thought, how ridiculous is this?
Mm-hmm. Gary McDowell via YouTube, I can't see Eddie leaving in this window. This is a good point. This is a very good point. Arsenal concentrating on defensive midfielders and not looking for a striker. What do you think? I was going to bring this up in any case, Gary, so thanks for raising it on the bulletin. The reason I was going to bring it up, you mentioned earlier on, and Cham has had some speculation linking him to clubs such as Southampton and I think West Brom, a couple of French clubs as well, Lawrence. We've heard the rumours which I think were shot down by Neil Lennon in relation to Ryan Christie and Burnley, and we've heard rumours around Edouard with Aston Villa and Arsenal. Now, for the last fortnight, I have been watching the breaking transfer news every single morning for a number of hours, every single morning on Sky Sports, and not once have I heard Celtic mentioned. Not one Celtic player is linked to any English clubs. I think
he's right with Eddie. I think Eddie wants to stay. Celtic's looking for a lot of money. It's 40 million upwards. COVID's coming in. I think every club's thrown their belt in a bit. Arsenal do appear to be looking elsewhere for their reinforcements. Not in that position. Celtic don't want to sell. It doesn't look like anyone wants to buy. So it's. I think it would suggest he's going to stay. Even if it is, even if Villa come in with an offer, would he go to Villa? If Musa got Leon, right, surely Eddie's got his eyes on a bigger club.
I think, you've made a great point there, because I've said before, Lawrence, I don't think Villa's the right club. I don't want him to leave. I certainly don't want him to leave, but I don't think Villa's the right club for Odsonne Edouard. He could end up going down there and scoring 8 or 9 goals in a season. Because of the club that he's at, but he'd be up against it. You look at, for example, some of the frustrating games we've watched this season where the other clubs parked the bus, and we've already credited Hibs for not doing that at the weekend. They didn't park the bus and Celtic were able to express themselves. But when you're up against it, it's difficult for a striker in a game like the game against St Mirren, where every time the ball comes to him, he's surrounded by 3 or 4 players. You saw Edouard coming deep to try and get involved in the play, and it's been something that we've actually seen a number of times this season. If you go to a club like Villa, you're not going to be getting the opportunities that you get at Celtic. You might get half a dozen opportunities from game to game where you've got goal scoring opportunities to such a degree that I think we've seen strikers at Celtic Park in the not too distant past who have scored 30 goals in a season who weren't outrageously great strikers. It's just that the actual chances were there. Scott McDonald would be an example. Now, I'm not criticising McDonald. I thought he was a decent enough striker, but he was, and somebody's going to say he scored the winner here or he scored the winner there. Yeah. But I think it's down to the way Celtic play and the amount of chances. Scott McDonald, 30 goals in a season for Celtic. What did he do when he left Celtic?
Even outside of McDonald, what about Guidetti? Came in and he was getting...
No penalties. That season, no penalties did he score.
Yeah.
But he still burst the 30 goal mark, didn't he?
So, yeah, I think Celtic strikers traditionally get a lot more chances, don't they? I think Eddie's ambition's got to be a club at least as big as the one Musa went to, if not bigger. I think he's got more potential. So I think Eddie's maybe looking at another season here. His advisors have got to be looking at world football and going, where's things? How many clubs are going to be standing after this season? What would the leagues look like? Will Celtic still be playing in Scotland? Will it be national leagues? Will it be regional leagues? Because Celtic in a bigger league becomes a different proposition. Mm-hmm. It may be that he wouldn't want to move then. If it's some kind of mini European league, a regional league, a British league, who knows? Maybe they're saying, look, hang tight for another year, do a bit of development, and let the dust settle on COVID. And see where you can go, because right now maybe clubs can't commit to big contracts or they may view Eddie as a risk coming for Scottish football and go, well, we don't want that risk just now until we know when we're getting fans back into games, what income streams are going to look like, what leagues are going to look like.
This is a big discussion point that in the past you were shot down if you ever spoke about Celtic leaving Scottish football. It's never going to happen. The chance, the ship has sailed, for the English league. But all bets are off. We know that. All bets are off. No one knows what's round the corner in terms of the collapse of certain clubs or leagues. And where will that leave Celtic? Because they're such a huge brand that, things that maybe have been stipulated previously that's prevented the move. And we know what happened because we covered it in a couple of intriguing podcasts. I'm not just saying that because it was an ACSOM podcast. Some of the information we were getting from, the likes of Paul Smith, who was advising, in fact he was the lawyer, Fergus McCann, around the Wimbledon deal in 98. We spoke to David Lowe, who bought a football club to use it as a Trojan horse to see if we could do it and take Clydebank to Dublin, Yep. So we learned a lot from those two guys. But at that time, after 98, with the change of regulation after the World Cup, as it was explained by David Lowe, there was basically a barrier brought down. Celtic won't be joining the English League, but all bets are off. This is a big thing. We don't know where we're going to be in 6 months in terms of football, Lawrence, and we don't know what the structure of each individual league is going to look like. But there will be opportunities, I'm sure, once the dust settled. The dust will settle. The virus is here to stay. I think there's a lot of people who think that there's going to be a great announcement one day and we've beaten the virus. We're never going to beat it. The virus is here to stay. It's all about being able to adapt the infrastructure of each individual country to ensure that we can live with it, because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the virus may change. I mean, Sweden think that they're over it, but virus aside, just on financials, it's this year's financials that's going to kill them, which is brought in by are a symptom of how we've dealt with the virus, shall we put it that way. So whatever you think of the virus, if it's adapted, if Sweden's better, we're going to have a season where clubs are going to have to deal with that the income's just not going to be there.
No.
And Scottish football was heralded as relying on ticket sales and people through the door.
Yeah.
That was the best model ever before this virus, because TV companies, the money might dry up, something could change. Mm-hmm. Well, definitely the ticket money is not going to be there. I know Celtic have sold virtual season tickets, so have other clubs, but the match day walk-up's not there for every other club in the league.
Average revenue per every punter, every single game.
So a visit to Celtic Park will spend more than a season book holder, because someone's going there as maybe once or twice a season, so they're going to the shop. Celtic would maximise their revenue out it. But other clubs that don't have the season book base, they would have maybe a steady home crowd of 5,000 walk-ups or something, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be there. It's going to be the same across Europe. Clubs without money, the rumour is we'll head into a recession after this. Europe will, that's what they're expecting. Our banks then going to want to bankroll football clubs. We're lucky we've got Dermot Desmond and Dennis O'Brien, two extremely wealthy guys, two genuine billionaires, that I don't think would let Celtic go to the wall. Celtic without revenue, that's it, isn't it? So there's going to be certain clubs that are financially sound enough to survive this, or definitely outlast the rest of the clubs in their leagues.
Yeah.
Or the majority. If you get down to what would happen if, say, 4 of the teams in the Scottish top division couldn't compete next season? What you do is bring up who's left from the first division. Would businessmen then look at this as a catalyst and an opportunity to say, this is what can drive change in football. Mm-hmm. This is how we make Celtic an even bigger brand. This is how we get exposure to a bigger football market.
The big thing is, in this, sometimes the word exploit is seen as a bad thing, but in business, businesses are always looking to exploit circumstances, aren't they?
Well, I think you use the word adapt, and that's what Darwin said, wasn't it? Isn't the strongest, isn't the smartest, it's the most adaptable. Mm-hmm. So there's been a huge change in circumstance. Who's best placed to adapt it to their advantage? And I think in Scotland, it's Celtic's its best place to adapt to it. Let's hope, the guys that run the club are, and I'm sure they are, they'll be having talks with other clubs around about Europe, they'll be having talks with clubs in England, because there'll be certain clubs that are rumoured to be going bust almost every week. Mm-hmm. There'll be other clubs that maybe know that if this goes on for a year that they can't go bust. But similarly, there'll be other clubs and leagues go, well, we've got some funds that we can see out this season and we can play next season if we've got somewhere to play. Mm.
Chaz Buchan, welcome back to the show. Great to see you getting involved again. You're commenting on YouTube. I'll just remind everybody that's watching, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to us, because we're putting out loads of content. We're also involved in some other content, non-Celtic related. Lawrence, we have just agreed with a Scottish League club that we will be producing their podcast. How good is that?
That's top, you know.
I won't be on it. I don't have the knowledge of the club, but I'll be producing it for A State of Mind. So we are expanding all the time, and I keep saying this, if you've got a good idea or a concept, or if you're a budding presenter and you want to come on the show, give me a shout, because we are looking to expand the team as well, Lawrence. But Chaz is saying that me and the boys from my bus used to steal designer polos and jumpers by the Barra and sell them in the pubs or in the jungle in the good old 80s.
What's always 5-finger discount, it means?
Hey, you know, I always remember, I've never been one for going to the pubs when I'm going to the football, Lawrence. It's just never been part of my match day, right? But going to the Barrowlands to watch a gig was a different example entirely. And when I always do remember being in the boozers and people coming in with hooky goods.
I used to drink around, but with Dad when he was alive, we'd dress him, and John Scanlon had the toll booth, but it didn't matter what day of the week it is. In fact, you sometimes had people going, you needing anything? you know, 50%.
Taking orders, yeah.
But they'd walk in, and even extends beyond that. Maybe it's a Celtic pub culture, because I was down a Cock Tavern in London, you know, not far from Euston, big Celtic pub, and the same thing happened there. Guy came in, and it looked like the side of a pig that it got for somewhere. You know, it was all wrapped up in, best before and everything. I'll look at it, sell it. You had that and boxes of perfume. So yeah, there's a definite pop culture there, isn't there?
There's a great Liverpudlian documentary that was made by a French director whose name escapes me at the moment. You'll Never Walk Alone, it's called, and it covers people like Mick Head from Shack and Ian McCulloch from Echo and the Bunnymen, a good friend of ours, Edgar Summertime Jones from The Stairs. And there's a scene in it where he's in a boozer in Liverpool, and this guy comes in, he's selling veg. He buys an onion.
Jeez.
Honestly.
Stealing veg, come on. Surely you've got to go for a higher value target.
Veg. Gary, what else was he selling? Gary Doonan, Prozinecki, Zagreb 98 at Celtic Park. Best ever performance by an opposing player at Celtic. And he was just so cool, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Did he not smoke 40 fags a day? He probably only smoked 5, but by the time we heard about it, it was 40.
Probably 40 in his day off. He's maybe heard about Socrates, and he's went, that's who I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and so Dr. Socrates, he was a 60 a day man, wasn't he?
Socrates.
So Rye's big brother. Remember Rye for PSG? Socrates was his big brother. It was a late 82 team. Yeah.
Wow. It's an education sitting here with you. You know that, Lawrence. Agent Bolly Bomb Scare. Good moniker. Harry Redknapp signed Prozinecki later in his career for Portsmouth, if I'm not mistaken. I remember it now. I could never have told you that before that came up. And we've also got Stephen Forbes. The team that played Sarajevo in 2019 included several players I expect to see on Thursday. Beaton, Christie, Brown, Eddie, McGregor, Ayer. Griff was on the bench. Now 1 year on, he may be there again. That's reminding me, I do have to ask you for your predicted 11, which I'll come to in a moment. But there is no way I can do that without bringing up Gary McDowell's point. Going back to some of the brands that we opened up with, because you had the cap on your chest there. SPX trainers. Remember SPX trainers? Because now you're reminding me of British Knights. It was SPX, British Knights and Troop. Yeah.
Just wouldn't buy British Knights, mate. You're Celtic fan, you've got...
SPX also had the butcher's apron on it, didn't it?
So it's brands that I wouldn't buy.
No.
It's like Barber wax jackets. Mate, they just lost the sale.
Absolutely. And Reebok trainers.
Yep, another one gone.
No, you're right, but SPX also fell into that category. They had the Union Jack, Sergio Tacchini.
Yeah, Sergio Tacchini, another cool Italian brand.
It was, there was something about the Italian brands, wasn't there? And my personal favourite was a Neri with a wee NR badge, and you know, some of the jerseys they did for the Italian clubs in the 80s and the 90s.
It was maybe Italia 90, Golaccio, you know, exploding on at Channel 4, that just kind of propelled that culture to us. Because it was before Sky, wasn't it? You were getting Golaccio, and it was TV you didn't have to pay for. You know,
I know, and we had this newfound interest in Italian football, didn't we? But it was at that point, you know, a lot of people, dare I say, were interested in Gascoigne at Lazio.
Yeah, he was good at Newcastle, decent at Spurs, over to Lazio. I'm not too sure how much he'd done there. He got that injury at Spurs before he left. But, you know, Italia 90 was a good World Cup as well, wasn't it? Roger Mila, Italy's golden generation, Baggio.
The worst part about Italia 90 was the final. It was a poor final, but leading up to that, it was a great tournament to support the Republic of Ireland, wasn't it?
Toto Scalaccio, yeah, well, Republic of Ireland.
It was Scalaccio that scored against them, wasn't it? Yeah.
You saw it coming in 88.
Aye.
Beating England. That was, I didn't even have a sponsor in the 88 jersey. That was classic. I had that when I was, that was Adidas as well. That was a cracking jersey. But by the time they made, it was Opel by the time they got in 1990, wasn't it? Was it the Irish sponsor?
That's right.
But that was great. Packy Bonner got another year at Celtic out here, another few years actually, because he was going to go to Killie. He was out of contract at Celtic, saves the penalty, meets the Pope, saves the penalty. Celtic sign him again. What was the deciding factor? Saving the penalties or meeting the Pope to get
You're bringing back memories. You're bringing back memories though, because Jack Charlton used to take his trips out to Harry Ramsden's and all that as well. So going back to the pies.
Yeah. Jack, big Celtic man, wasn't he?
He was, dearly departed as well. Big Red's reminding us that Mark Viduka played with Prozeneki, remember, for the Croatia Zagreb.
That turn on the box for Viduka, I think that's why we signed him.
I remember him getting interviewed after the game, and he says that they asked him about Celtic. He says, I heard that there's a lot of good Catholic boys up there. That's what he said. But back then he was Marco Viduka.
Yeah, Marco Viduka.
Aye, and then he dropped the O, didn't he? So that takes us on to Thursday night's game, Lawrence. Give me your predicted 11.
Barkas and goal.
Yep.
Taylor, stick on. I'll go with Frimpong. So it's 2 wing backs. Centre halves, I'll go with Duffy, Beaton and Ayer. I think I'll just stick with that. I don't know how close to fit Big Julian is, but even if he's fit, I would stick with that.
Yeah.
Midfield, it's got, two straight away. It's 2 of the 3. It's Brown McGregor.
Aye.
So who comes in, Turnbull or Chams, I suppose that is the question here. And I'd probably
Is Christie definitely out, yeah?
It looked a bad one he took. I don't know if he's definitely out. But I'd rather not risk him playing with an injury, and I think we're covered enough. So if it's touch and go, it's an area we don't need to risk anyone that's 90%, isn't it? Might go right, it's carrying a bit, taking a bit, some abuse there. I would start with Cham. Just European experience, I think it will suit us. And up front, Moy and French Eddie.
It's interesting how quickly these things change. A couple of weeks ago, we wouldn't be picking Beaton and El Yunusi as starters, would we?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I thought that was El Yunusi's position.
You did mention it.
Big Beaton is.
If you say it enough, on a Celtic State of Mind, it happens. We've got Roderick back in the team as well.
Here's the thing: is that our best ever signing from Man City, Beaton?
Did Beaton go to Man City? I know he was on trial there. Did we not sign him? He was on trial. I do know.
Trial, was it?
Yeah, I think he was on trial with Man City.
We need to check that out.
I would need to check. I'm sure we brought him in from an Israeli side, the same side that Rami Gershon played for. Remember him?
I remember Rami Gershon. Yeah, he was. And we've had
so many
good
players
deals from Israel, was it?
Aye. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. But I don't think Beaton actually signed for Man City. I think him and Wanyama had a trial with Man City.
I think, Wanyama came from Belgium, was it Gershon or something? What's his team came from? But yeah, I think Wanyama had a trial.
Ashod.
Is Ashod not? That's not the Belgian team. That's his Israeli team, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm doing all this from memory. I'm not checking Google. Somebody actually told us it was Shadwick. Remember the ID? Yeah. Shadwick, yeah.
So, Wanyama, cracking signing. Yeah, he definitely wasn't a Man City. Thought at one point he might have ended up there, or even back at Celtic Park, but where is he? Is it Canada or the States? Or did he end up going?
I know. Wanyama came, someone's reminding me, Bob Doig's reminding us that Wanyama came from Germinal Beerschot, Belgian football, but he had certainly been on trial, maybe not at the same time, but him and Beaton had been on trial at Man City.
I mind that Lenny was taking a wee bit of abuse when he signed Wanyama, because we're
900k.
Yeah, and I think people are going, it's other areas of the team we need to strengthen. What we need another midfielder for.
Every time I hear Wanyama's name, it takes me back to Firhill, because we had a bounce game against Partick Thistle, and Emilio came back from his broken leg. This was his first game back. Right. And I remember going to the game and it was completely mobbed. I think the Green Brigade were there. I'm sure they were actually. But I remember seeing the player who, to this day, I still reckon is the worst Celtic striker I've ever seen playing for Celtic. Rasmussen.
Morton
He was
Rasmussen.
terrible. I mean, he was shocking. He was shockingly bad that day.
Worse than Biggins.
And I did see him as well. Got his autograph on a St Johnstone programme. He was
selling them?
he might have been actually another ex-Man City player, if you want to talk about Man City players. But yes, he was terrible. It looked to me like he was not interested in the slightest, because it was like a team that was made up some youth players, some fringe players, just to get Emilio a game.
Yep.
And Wanyama was in the dugout. He wasn't stripped, he had the tracksuit on, but he was in the dugout. We just signed him, I think, the day before. Wanyama, we didn't know much about him at the time.
Yeah, the Danish Duncan Ferguson, Rasmussen.
They used to call him Big Duncan, didn't they?
Yeah.
So here we go. Kevin Graham confirms Beaton and Wanyama were both on trial at Man City. And Fraser Ogilvie, Beaton couldn't get a work permit for Man City. So that prevented him.
Right.
Yeah. But was it Ashdod? Because we got
Ashdod.
Effie came from there as well, didn't he?
Yeah, Effie came from there. Well, it depends. Is it Dudu, the agent that we use over there?
Yeah. But see, we're doing all this from memory. You know, I'm not checking Google or anything, so we're relying on you to give us the facts. We're just throwing a few bones out there. Joe Porter, Rasmussen, blast from the past. Honestly, Joe, this was the worst performance I had seen by a Celtic striker.
Bounce game, maybe some players don't. But
he wasn't interested. No.
He scored a few goals. He came, he scored a couple of goals. Was it 1 and 3 or something he was from his starts?
Probably, because I remember he scored a couple at East End.
Yep.
In one of the cup games. He scored a couple that day. And I think he might have came off the bench, so that would have helped his goal scoring ratio, but he just wasn't good enough. But there was a whole procession of players like that we were bringing in at that time.
Yeah, there was
quite a lot of centre halves. Remember Josh Hulvelt? Remember him?
Yes.
And we brought in Thomas Ronja, and I thought Ronja had a bit of
Norway,
potential.
But did he not end up at Southampton?
I think it was Southampton, yeah.
Ronja looked good. A few injuries though, wasn't it? Left us at 24 or something. Don't know where he went after that. He refused a new after a new contract, and he refused, didn't he?
Was that? That's right.
I can't remember who signed him from us, but he refused the contract from us.
He went down.
As if he was going to be okay, didn't he?
He went to England.
Aye.
He got to Wigan.
Might have been, but never to be seen again.
Jimbo says lucky he never seen Jim Melrose ex-Man City.
Aye.
Another Celtic Man City connection is Jerry Craney.
Craney, yeah. I was actually watching highlights on Twitter. Craney double McStay.
Oh, was that the St Mirren game?
Yeah.
I remember it, yeah. It's Love Street.
Yep.
Listen, we're just going to talk about bad Celtic strikers now, of which I don't think Craney was part of that group. I don't think he was a bad Celtic striker by any means. Bob Doig, the story with Rasmussen. Oh, should I really just read this out or should I just remove it? Let's read it first. Alan Thompson says to him during a train session, remember, it's a ball, not a bomb. Listen, it's true. It's true. Also, Paul, a girl I knew called Rasmussen Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga was better looking, I think. Joe Porter, Celtic have had a few dire strikers. Yeah, you're not joking there. Kevin Graham, Rasmussen and Robbie Keane up front. That was the East End Park game. Yeah,
Robbie Keane, he was cracking for us, but another player that couldn't buy a foul. Certain games, doesn't matter how many times he was getting no protection for him, you know.
That's
just
right.
to film without getting booked.
Particularly the Rangers game. He was booted all over the park.
I think Bagura was it.
He only played one game against Rangers, didn't he?
I think so. But what was it? Bagura had something like 9 fouls.
Aye,
after
right.
being on a yellow. Then he had a further 9 fouls just against Keane alone.
Mm-hmm. I know, it was poor.
Well, refs must have forgot the rules. Much like the weekend when he cuts out a ball to Celtic and there's no bounce.
Mm-hmm.
I just let Hibs attack. You're like, right, ref, come on.
Kevin Graham, Andy Payton was decent and a good lad. I like Andy.
I really like Payton. Everywhere he went, it was like kind of 1 and 3 for Payton. At the time he came in, it wasn't the best Celtic team, but great turn from him. Really industrious striker. Worked his ass off, didn't he? He was. I thought he was. Really
He was, you know, in a very dark kind of time, and his goal scoring record's pretty decent for Celtic.
I mean, I know he was following on from the likes of, you know, a few years previously. Well, guy we don't talk about, and Brian McClare up front. You know, you'd some really cracking strikers then. Then you'd Maka, and Andy Walker. So, yeah, he was falling hard acts, but Payton had it not as good a Celtic team, but still kept up his goals.
He did well. He was a hard worker.
With Cascarino around about that time, just before that, Jakanovsky. Tommy Coyne, who was underrated.
I think Tommy Coyne was underrated. Yeah, I was a big fan. I think when Liam Brady came in, that signalled the end of Coyne's time at Celtic. One of the first things he tried to do, in fact, was to sell him to Man City for $500,000, and the deal fell through. And I don't think, because that deal was ongoing, I don't think if Brady knew Coyne was staying, we would have signed Cascarino.
And if we didn't have Cascarino, we'd never get Tommy Boyd.
Well, I don't know. He was destined for Celtic, Boydie, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it's down Chelsea, wasn't he? So it's like, and they wanted Cascarino, even after watching him play. But saying that Cascarino then plays for Republic of Ireland, does well, bangs him in at Marseille.
Have you read his book?
I've not, no.
Full time.
No.
I'd recommend it. On the subject of football books, there's so many football books, but there's so many autobiographies, and a lot of them are formulaic.
Yep.
And the ones that I would pull out that might not be that obvious: Tony Cascarino, excellent, not very thick actually, quite a thin book. Paul McGrath, outrageous, back from the brink. Mickey Quinn, remember Mickey Quinn that played for Newcastle?
Yep.
His book's worth reading as well. Loads of others, but there's three that came to my mind just now. Joe Porter, who was a Swedish guy with the dreads, not Larson. Bangura, yeah. Recommended by Larson, I think.
I just done walk to Johnny Thompson's grave for the 85th anniversary, and at half time he got to walk round the park, and that was like Bangura. On the bench they all got to meet him as well, and he almost scored against us the following season when we loaned him back.
Well, one of a select few players who have played for and against Celtic in Europe.
Joe Ingeberger, was that? He just
didn't didn't get
much of a chance at Celtic, but then scored a couple against us.
I know, so did Harold Bratback.
But always remember for a goal against St Johnstone. Tommy Boyd put it into a cross. Larson opened the scoring that day, but yeah, Tommy Boyd, and then Bratback, cool as you like, back in it.
Interestingly, Alistair Jack, the worst forward, Chris Killen, ex-Man City now. Chris Killen got himself into bother a couple of years ago. Very, very, seedy crime, if you ever want to Google that one. But I think he just escaped jail. But obviously, when it was reported, it was ex-Celt Chris Killen.
It's the only way the media up here knows how to report it, isn't it?
I think so. Now, I love a wee walk down memory lane. We're going to leave it with another one of Danny McGrain's protégés. It was Amido Baldi. It wasn't great. I remember he started up front in pre-season friendly with Tony Watt. On screen it read, a Baldi T Watt, good vibes, a bald twat.
So
Nick John, thanks
Liverpool?
For that.
Was that against Liverpool in Dublin?
He scored a cracker against Liverpool, didn't he?
In Dublin, yeah.
Aye, but I've got to say it. Danny McGrain told me Amido Baldi was the worst player he's ever seen in a Celtic jersey. So there you go. Thanks everybody for joining us today. It's been an education, as it always has been, from information being supplied by Lawrence and also from all of you guys and girls out there joining us on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. It's a real pleasure to do the Celtic State of Mind Bulletin, and we'll keep it coming on a weekday basis. So all that's left for me to say is thank you, Lawrence Conley, for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks for having me.